This video is being brought to you compliments of Exodus Printing Solutions, located at Pine St. Michael opposite the Polytechnic. Tell 830-3434 or email exodusroots@gmail.com.
It's good that Maurice is here because Maurice is a person who has a tendency to play some bass in the band here. Yeah. So.
And what do you usually play, Maurice?
He's a keyboard player.
Yeah.
Yeah, but sometimes he takes over on the bass.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, we still do that, and of course I play the cello as well as guitar, you know, and Junior Jazz plays guitar as well as sings.
Yeah.
So we do have some instrumentation shifting happening,
so,
you know.
So how did that happen? How did that come up? Is that something you guys just did for fun and incorporated, or you worked on as a feature of your act?
Sometimes out of necessity, because like for instance when we're doing our drum section of our show, there's a section where Tony gets off the kit and comes down and plays djembe, and Maurice goes up and just keeps some rhythm on the drum kit itself.
Right.
So that was out of necessity, because what was happening is that there was no one playing the kit. So I was playing the kit for a while, but it caused a time problem between time lapse between when I had to get off the kit, go and get my cello and come forward. So for the smooth running of the show, we had to change that up, and Maurice can go behind the drum set and do a little thing too. So we just made it happen that way. But sometimes that's how it is. You know what I mean? Yes, I would say we always are. In fact, Maurice can tell because he's a producer, and he has plenty of young artists that he's working with. And even Third World is right now working with Damian Marley, who is producing our current record that we are working on. Okay. So we are hooked up with a younger generation, you know, and even dialed into even younger people, because right now there's another younger set, the whole Chronic set and all that, and we're very dialed into that whole set too. So, you know, but Maurice can tell you a little bit about the work that he's been doing.
There's one called Caution from Antigua. He's the ambassador for Antigua Reggae as an artist. So he's coming out, and he's doing some good stuff.
What kind of work do you do with him?
Write and produce.
Rastafarians have made great strides in art, you know, not only in painting but in culture. I think Rastafarians have done extremely well in media. Mutabaruka, for instance, comes to mind. And so I would say that it's not just really an element of just the music alone. I think that Rastafarians have made a whole heap of strides in just generally in culture. Even in politics, you've had Damian Crawford, you've had, you know, other Rastafarian sisters who have made it in Jamaican political scene, and you have them throughout the Caribbean, you know. So I mean, the tremendous literary writers, Rastafarians have been great writers of books and poems and children's books, and so I think that it's been an all-round positive thing, you know. All kind of culture, all kind of cultural things, fashion too. The Mama Yashi, you know, and stuff like that. So it's one of these things that Rasta has made a mark on practically every walk of life, I would say. But clearly, as you put it, it's found a home with reggae music, you know. But it doesn't mean to say that they haven't excelled in it. Our political system is one of a democratic base, And based on that, anybody should really be able to run or to represent, you know, the people of his own home. And so, based on that, you know, I would say that I would like to see more Rastafarians get involved in the political scene. There's too much of this business of Rasta trying to distance himself from politicians because politicians is a wicked man and the Babylonian and thing. I can't adhere to that because we need a voice inside the House of Parliament that is speaking on behalf of people who are like-minded in culture and who are like-minded in stressing important things that we see. And from that point of view, I think it's very important for us to have a voice in the various parliaments and not to segregate ourselves and say we are Rasta and we don't deal with this and we don't deal with that. No, that is old time thinking, that is foolish. Like Raging Fire, Nomads and them people.
Yes.
Well, I think it's great because I think it really speaks to like third world's history.
Yeah.
You know, it speaks to what Steel Pulse was and still is. It speaks to what Aswad was and still is. It speaks to, you know, a number of great musical institutions that have been like that. Morgan Heritage has a similar thing to it, although even with the Morgan Heritage thing, we can see whereby Peter Morgan and Gramps Morgan are two individual artists on their own, you know, but when the band comes together, it falls under one heading. But I like it. I like it from the point of view that we are too focused as listeners and as music appreciators on one frontman or on one solo person that we focus on, you know, Bob Marley and the Wailers, Peter Tosh, Damian Marley, Steve Marley, you know. And there's a bunch of fantastic musicians behind these guys who tend to be a little overshadowed by the front man. So I kind of like it, the fact that that there are still bands out there, that the conglomerate is bigger than the one entity, you know. I think that is something special. And I don't mind the frontman situation because even in a symphony orchestra, you would have a London Symphony Orchestra with the soloist tonight is Coore, or, you know, or the soloist is Sunshine doing her opera kind of thing. So I don't mind that, but I think that it's also great to feature when there's a group. You see, a group is difficult because you have to get everybody in the same mindset. And you have to get everybody focused on playing their part in developing something that is about them but not them. If you can see where I'm coming from. So it's sort of, to me, it's an achievement to really get that to happen.
To pull it off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that goes for anything, whether you're doing a play, whether you're doing a production of some kind, whether you're doing a musical, or you're doing anything like that. You know, the director always tries to tell the actors that it's not about them, it's about the production, it's about the film, it's about what they're doing. And it humbles you, number one. Even though you're great, it humbles you, it brings you into a union with others, right? That's really necessary in this world today. If we had more unity in this world today and less solar stars, I think that we would be a better off world. So for me, yes, I like the up and coming bands that are featuring more the conglomerate more than the one. Is that we were invited to go to South Africa and we did not go. And our stance that we took at the time was due to the apartheid situation. And we were invited to go to Sun City for a lot of money. And we did not go. we took a stance against it and we said we weren't going, and we also indicated that we were hoping that other acts would follow us and not go down there. And subsequently to all of that changing, we have been to South Africa and we love it very much. And you know, this was the reason for the United Nations reaching out to us. And I wouldn't say it was just because of that, it's because of other voices that from within the Third World and from within the Third World House that had spoken out about things, such as poverty. We had been to Nigeria, we had supported, you know, causes in Abidjan. We had, you know, we're one of the first bands to really go down to Nigeria and really spend time down there and play in the colleges down there, you know, in the universities and all of that. So I think our approach to Africa and our approach to that whole business of not going to South Africa is what prompted the UN to give us that Africa in Crisis medal, which is to this day one of the finest moments I think the band has had. You know, that was a political moment, not a musical moment really, and it is special to us still to this day. Well, our name is Third World, first and foremost. So, I mean, right there, that in itself speaks for certain things. But also the fact that most Rastafarians are deeply believe, most Rastafarians deeply believe that Africa is really the center of where the world really is coming from. Whether you're black, white, pink, green, or whatever, the first known life form came from there. So, if you're looking back in any way at where you're coming from, you have to figure out that right there in that little horn of Africa, in that little area there between Africa and the Middle East and East Africa like Ethiopia, you know, and up in that Morocco area and the North Africa and all that stuff is really where a lot of the whole world's energy came from. And so based on that, we look to Africa then as one of the prominent countries on the planet. You know what I'm saying? Sure, we look to the US as the richest and most powerful country, and we look to them as the leader in many, many things. You know, they tend to lead the world in a lot of stuff. Some good, maybe some not so good. But the European nations have a similar thing, but they're smaller than the US, but they're powerful too. Germany is very powerful. England is very powerful to this day, France and so on. But Africa as a nation out there with the culture and the history is concerned is, to me, a primary. In other words, it will be a primary stop on my bus route. You know, it will be one of the first stops where you have to make that stop if you're going to go on the world tour. That would be that would be the simplest way for me to put it, because me and you could sit down here and talk for hours about that and go into all kind of different concepts, and you know, and the saddest thing about it is that there's not a United States of Africa. There's the United States of America, but there's not a United States of Africa. That to me I think is negative, because if Africa was unified, there's no telling what kind of contribution to the world it would have made. You know, you just think of all the riches in Africa. If all of that was under one banner, if everybody could live together and leaders could decide who is the leader of Africa by not only from the point of view of saying, like, well, with Haile Selassie, you know, this was someone who was ordained biblically through writings and through scriptures and so on and so on and so on. So when he became the head of the Organization of African Unity, there's nothing strange about that, you know. But Africa doesn't have enough leaders like that. That's one of all time, you know. And the other leaders, in my opinion, some of them have not been strong enough to lead all of Africa. They may be able to lead Zimbabwe, or they may be able to lead Uganda, but there has never been anyone who has come up who the closest it came was through Selassie, the Organization of African Unity. Well, that is disbanded now, and there's even war in Africa now to some great extent between some countries and stuff. It has been more peaceful in recent times, I have to say, but still we have that situation where it's not unified. And I think it would be a much stronger presence as a continent if it was. I mean, it's a vast, vast place, you know. It's not
huge.
Yeah.
Africa.
Yes, it's massive and has so much wealth and so much land that could be so productive for agriculture. Africa could feed Africa easily if people got there, put their noses to it. You know, so
The first stop off the bus.
yeah, it's the first step on the tour.